In this video, I'm going to be covering my home exercise rule of 3. So let's jump right into the video. Hi there, my name is Derek and welcome to GamerBody. This video is all about my home exercise rule of 3 and how it can help you develop your muscles at different angles and make them look overall better and fuller. So my rule of 3 works as follows. What I do is I take one base exercise and then pair it with two similar exercises that complement the original very well, but also tend to have something like it changes the angle of the exercise and brings variety into my training. For example, let's look at some pull exercises. If I take the base of, say, a bent over row, which is a heavy compound lift, I could then match it with something like a pull-up as you're changing again the angle. So when you're doing bent over rows, you're pulling from the ground up. When you're doing pull-ups, you're pulling straight towards or straight up above your head. So you're changing the angle of the exercise of where you're pulling from. And then if we did something like inverted rows to complement again, we're now pulling from the ground up, but you're pulling your body towards the ceiling at a different angle. So each one of these is slightly different, allows you to provide more variety, as well as hit more of the back muscles that you might be neglecting if, say, I only did the bent over row. The goal here is basically twofold. I want to, again, hit the muscles at different angles, and I want to provide the variety so that the workouts don't get stale, and you can have a bit more fun in your training week to week. Alright, so I compiled a list of all the major muscle groups of the body for my training. So this is kind of what you see over at GamerBody.com. But I want to go over the recent ones I'm looking at and provide some examples you can look into to see if maybe these fit for your rule of 3, or if you want to swap in your own because you think yours might be better for your current situation. So without waiting around, let's jump into the exercises and see which ones I picked for my rule of 3 with each body part. So to start off, let's look at our push exercises. So the base exercise I chose here is the incline bench press. Now you can pick bench press if you like, but I personally enjoy doing the incline a bit more as it hits again a little bit more of that upper chest, which tends to get neglected if you don't have a little bit incline or you never do them. So my first complement is the overhead press, another major compound movement, but again, you're going now from kind of an incline bench press style to straight overhead with your pressing. So you're changing the angle with a big compound movement. Now my second complementary exercise for the push is the dip. The dip is great because again, now you're completely changing the angle and you're pushing away from the ground. So instead of pushing up overhead, now you're pushing straight up from the ground. And again, that's changing the angle of the push. Now you're hitting a little bit more of the triceps, but you're also getting a lot more of the lower chest development in here as well. It's a great total body exercise. All right, now let's move on to our pull exercises. So coming in with the base for the pull, which I kind of covered earlier, is the bent over row. The bent over row is great at developing a large part of your back muscles. So this is the best one I think to start out with, and you can overload this pretty well by just adding weight. The next exercise is the pull-up. The pull-up, while a bit more difficult, is a great overhead pulling movement to help get a lot more of the upper back while doing this. Again, you're not really fixated to the floor anymore, but you're changing the angle of the movement to get a little bit more back activation. And the last one is the inverted row. So instead of pulling straight up overhead, we're now pulling towards the ceiling, but more at a horizontal angle to get another version of a pull movement in for our training routine. All right, now we'll move on to our leg exercises. So for legs, coming in with pretty much the king of all exercises, and that is the squat. The squat hits pretty much all of your lower body with a bit of emphasis on the quads. Now, the one thing about legs that is a bit different is that I'm actually going to be doing this at slightly different targets for my lower body. So instead of doing separate angles for the quads, I'm going to be doing the quads, then a hamstring style one, and then kind of an overall lower body moving forward. So the second exercise after saying that is the deadlift. So instead of being a quad dominant exercise, this one's going to be much more of a posterior or glute and hamstring style exercise movement. There's a lot more pulling here, so we went from kind of a pushing movement with the lower body to a pulling movement, but again, I still put this in the legs category, so this comes in at number 2. So we've gone from a squat to a hinge style movement in the deadlift to now a lunge, so I like to do reverse lunges personally to kind of round out all of the lower body. I prefer the reverse lunge as it does put a little less strain on my knees. If you can do walking lunges, that is great because that keeps your momentum kind of moving forward, but I don't really like pushing back towards the beginning. That's why I do reverse, so I kind of fall back and go back up to the standing versus going out and pushing back towards the start, because for me has been a little bit tough on my knees overall. So maybe if you were at the right place in your training, you can do those ones, but I prefer reverse for that reason. All right, and now let's take a look at our core exercises. So the first core exercise I have, and this was changed recently, is the reverse crunch. Now you'll see I'm actually using my bench here at a slight incline. I prefer this way as I find this to be quite a bit harder. I had hanging leg raises in here, but I still don't like how fast my grip strength is lost in the movement. I still feel like it's more of a hip flexor dominant exercise. It's hard to remove the hip flexors from that movement, but here with the reverse crunch, I think I get a lot better while still having a really hard exercise. If you don't have a bench or anything like that, you can do them on the floor. This does make it quite a bit easier in my opinion, but if you have a bench, set it in an incline and try these out. You'll like these a lot. So with the reverse crunch, we're looking at the lower abs, where now I want to target more of the upper abs with the cable crunch. So for this, you will need some kind of resistance bands or something to pull down towards you, like some kind of cables. So I'm going to be using resistance bands here. But you're going to be trying to target your upper abs and pulling down towards the ground to gain more resistance and tension in those bands to help develop your upper abdominal muscles. And the last ab exercise is more of a stability style training. It kind of hits more of all the overall abs, and that is the ab roller. I also add in kind of going side to side to provide a little bit more instability and get my obliques to work a little bit more in this, but that is the third one I'm choosing for my rule of 3. So if you just did the push, pull, legs, and core here, you could honestly have a very good training plan throughout the week, especially depending on the level or your overall goals. However, I'm going to continue on and do a little bit more of the isolation-based exercises, which have some compound movements in them now, but I want to also show you what I'm going to pick for like my biceps, triceps, calves, and that kind of thing moving on in this video. Alright, so for our first isolation, we have the shoulders. So our first shoulder exercise is one of the major ones, and that is the good old shoulder fly. So here we're looking at hitting more of the medial delt and kind of developing more of that rounded shape. So this is one that's in every single program. Just watch out, don't do too much weight here. Make sure that you're under control and that you're able to move the weight securely and safely through the range of motion. So the shoulder fly is our base exercise. The first complement I have is the reverse fly. So while doing them at home, I'm going to be bending over a bit to do this exercise instead. If you're at a gym, you could use a machine like a reverse fly machine, but here I'm using dumbbells to complete this movement. And the last exercise is the pull apart. This one is more of a corrective and postural exercise, so I'm using resistance bands here in order to complete this, but I highly recommend you put this somewhere in your training so that you can help bring your shoulders back. For GamerBody and those who work out a lot at home, who are big gamers or you work 40 plus hours a week, a lot of people have forward rounded shoulders, so to help bring those back, we want to help strengthen those back shoulders and back muscles. So we need to help develop and make them stronger so that the chest muscles and shoulders aren't overpowering and bringing them forward. And that is why the pull apart is a great third exercise. All right, now into every man's favorite muscle, and that is the biceps. So a quick note for this one, I'm actually be throwing in some compound movements that are bicep targeted. So I like to start the first one off with the chin up. Yes, the chin up is a big back exercise, but your biceps are heavily used in this movement, especially if you're going straight up and down like you should be, instead of doing like, I don't know, some kind of kipping one. I don't know how you do kipping chin-ups, but make sure that you're doing these under control and that your biceps are doing a lot of the work here. Of course, your back will be involved in this, but just try and see if you can target a lot of the biceps, as you are overloading them pretty heavily here, and there's a lot of carryover that you can have while doing the chin-up movement. All right, now to change the angle, we're going to be doing the reverse bent over row. You can also do an incline reverse row if you want here, if you have a bench, but I like to do most things grounded and standing, as I find it is more athletic and takes overall more body stability to do these movements. So, and I just find it has better carryover into real life. So that is why I'm doing these reverse rows standing, but feel free if you need to or you have lower back pain to use a bench to do so. All right, now my third exercise, and you might recognize this one, and that is the good old bicep curl. However, I want you to have the twisting motion with this. So you can either do this alternating arms or two arms at the same time. I tend to like to save time, so I do them both at the same time. But who knows, maybe how you feel. If you want to lift a little more weight on one arm, you can do one arm at a time because it tends to be easier to do a lot more weight at one arm at a time. But again, I like to save some time, so I do both at the same time. Just make sure that you're turning over your hands, so supinating your hands as you lift, because that's actually one of the functions of the bicep, is to supinate the muscles. And during the chin up and the bent over reverse rows, we weren't supinating at all. So in this one, we want to make sure that we're turning over the wrist so that we can get some of that activation in the biceps. Down to our last two body parts. So the first one is the triceps. So the base for my tricep routine is the close grip bench press. Of course, your chest will be involved here, but this also heavily targets your tricep muscles. I definitely feel this when I start loading the weight up a bit heavy, and my chest might get a little more involved just to help get it up, but I definitely start feeling it when the dumbbells are close together and I'm pressing overhead. To complement this, another great exercise is the overhead tricep extension. However, there's two versions of this you can do. You can either do it with bands or dumbbells standing, but my preferred version of this is actually to take out my dip bar station or use something like the end of a sofa and have my hands overhead and kind of fall down and then push back up using my triceps. I feel this incredibly well in the long head of my triceps when I put them overhead this way, instead of doing just standard standing ones where I don't feel it quite as much. I can still feel, of course, but not as much. When I do this at an angle that's not quite perpendicular to the floor, but close to, and I have to push to get back up to starting position, I feel this way more. It's a lot harder. You might have to do it from your knees, but try this out and see if this is a better alternate version for you. If you can't do that, stick with the standing ones for now until you have the strength to do them. But you're also getting a lot of core involvement. You have your glutes involvement so you don't fall, so your hips don't fall in. All this stuff is being used if you do the one where you are kind of holding onto something in front of you, falling down and pushing away from it. So try it out and see what you think. And then the last complementary exercise is the tricep kickbacks. So we went again from overhead, now we're going down to our sides and pushing straight back perpendicular to the floor to really get those triceps working and holding the dumbbells from coming down towards the ground. All right, and now we are on to our last body part, and that is the calves. So my base exercise is, of course, the standard calf raises, which for my programming right now, I think I do for all the versions of it, as I think it just does the best overall. But I'm gonna give you two complementary exercises as well. So the first exercise to go along with the calf raise is the seated calf raise. For this, you may need dumbbells or weights of some kind across your thighs and knees. That way, when you push up with your feet to activate your calves, you have something pushing down against it. You could have something like sitting on you, I guess. That might not be too safe, but try it out and see how it works for you sitting with just some weights, or maybe even pushing down with them with your hands. And the last complementary exercise that I have for you is the single leg calf raise. So for this, I like to do all of them on one side and then on the other, depending on how many reps that you have in your plan. You can do them alternating, but for me, I found I lose balance very quickly if I do it this way. So I do them all on one leg and then all on the other, and that's how I finish out my calf training. All right, and that is it for my video on the rule of three. We went over how it works and a whole list of exercises you can test out and see if it works in your current programming to round out your muscles, make them bigger and stronger, and hit them from different angles. Feel free to swap out your own. If you think one works better for you, you do not have to use my examples, but try again to be changing the angle for them so that the rule of three works for you. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe to GamerBody for more videos just like this one. Also, please make sure to head over to GamerBody.com. There you can check out my current training program, the equipment I am using, and any other resources I am using in order to improve my training, get smarter with it, and then present it to you over time. All right, and that is it for this video. So again, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Be fit and game on.